Thank you for clicking in too. Explore the far-reaching impacts of the choices we make, one conversation at a time. This is the Ripple Effect. Today with us is another City Council member for District 3, Andrew Werner. Andrew is leading in the primary, and we were lucky enough to get him to come on and talk to us so we can get to know a little bit more about him. When we did our research, we couldn't really find much on him. I guess he's doing more of a grassroots approach. He's not really on a lot of social media and so forth. But he does have a good website, and we do want to sit down with him and get to know more about his campaign, his goals, and how he can benefit having him on the city council and what he'll vote for the benefit of our citizens. So with that, we want to just go ahead and let Andrew go ahead and tell us a little bit about himself and what drove him to be running for city council. So Andrew, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, why you're running for city council?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you guys for having me on. This is a good opportunity. Like I told you before, I think the best way that I think this is going to go is if we just have a dialogue and have fun together. So I'm just really appreciative of you guys giving me time to do this and talk about, my run for city council. I would say, if you ask me that question, there's a lot of reasons why I got into this. So I'll go a little bit further back. So I grew up in a house where my father was a minister, the pastor, and I got to grow up around him and my family being a part of just helping people, getting out there and doing doing works of service in the community, and all of that has made a long-lasting impact on me. And so, being around that my whole life, I transitioned into college and deciding what I wanted to do with my life. And I've always, gone into professions where you're helping people. So that's really what I like to do. I like to get out there and engage with the community. I like to help people. I think also I've been involved with the city council for well over a year now, basically watching all the videos or being there in person. And, some things that I've seen is that I think that we could do a better job in the city of representing our constituents. And it's, my experience in working with city council, that's kind of the conclusion that I came to, is that we need people in there that are going to be good representatives of the public, who are willing to listen to the concerns of the people and, utilize that information into the decisions that the city makes. So, as a school psychologist, my background is in criminal justice, and I got a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and master's degree in psychology. And now I'm a school psychologist, and I think that what the city council really needs is someone who has a keen ear and really wants to get people in a room together to problem solve the whatever it is that the needs are. And I think that someone who's willing to actively listen to those and put those requests and that problem solving history into play to serve in the city. I think that's a need that I saw, and so that's kind of what made me jump in, put my hat in the ring.
Okay, we can appreciate that. As a psychologist, you do spend a lot of time listening to other people, I'm sure. So you said you had a bachelor's in criminal justice and then went into psychology. That's kind of a different jump, especially going from criminal justice to school. What made that transition? Yeah,
so it's just kind of a journey for me. Out of college, after I got my criminal justice degree, I did a lot of different things. I worked with adjudicated youth. I worked in mental health. Actually worked as a prison guard in a prison for a while, and I know you can tell I have a very imposing figure. So I mean that was a natural thing for me to go in there, and I'm kind of an intimidating. No, I have a lot of just experience. I thought about going into the police force, but I guess that really, that just didn't appeal to me as much. So I went into like probation and counseling with that criminal justice degree, and did a lot of work in the community. So I went from working with youth and mental health and then to adults. And I really, decided probably in my late 20s, early 30s, that I really like working with kids. And I went back and got my degree in counseling, and that's when I started my career as a school counselor. Did coaching and all that kind of stuff that really I felt that I was being just an advocate for students and really giving back to the community. All of those things that's kind of what helped with my transition. And then after being in school for a while, I really liked doing that. School psychology just kind of fell into my lap. And after finishing up that second master's degree, I really found something that I really like to do. And that's because as a school psychologist, you're kind of in the middle there. You're advocating for students 100%, but you're also working with building administrators, teachers, outside community agencies, and you're really doing what you can to get all those people into a room with the idea that we're here to solve problems. And that's what I really found something that I really like to do, is just being a part of that problem-solving process. And it's not about me or what I can do. It's just about getting those stakeholders in a room and framing the conversation. So we're framing it as to what we'd like to see happen. And, so that's really kind of my personality. I just like to help people. I like to be a part of solutions. And that brings people, when you get people in a room in a problem-solving situation, it brings people together. So folks that may not necessarily have got along before, when you leave, a lot of times, we've had an experience together and we've come to a solution together. So that kind of brings people together, and that's what I like to do.
Coaching. I read that it was football, baseball, soccer, and wrestling.
I've done it all. Okay, so all those things.
You have all the credentials.
All
to coach
those
all
things
that
you said I have. I did. I coached wrestling in a middle school. I coached high school football. I was a defensive coordinator for a small school in Minnesota, actually. Baseball. I coached baseball.
What level?
Babe Ruth level.
Okay.
So that was when my younger brother was on the team. So I helped with that. And then most recently, because I got children that are girls, I spent probably 7 solid years of coaching multiple girls soccer teams from ages like 5 until middle school. And that was, I was considered like the soccer coach for the younger kids in the area that we were in. So that was a great joy of mine.
So we get a lot of questions from Palm Coast residents. And one of the things they wanted to ask was, and they wanted to ask if you were on a desert island and you had a TV,
okay,
and you could pick only one. It would be to watch the Super Bowl, to watch all Super Bowls, watch all World Cup, or all World Series. Which one would you pick? You can't watch all 3. You can only watch one forever. And you're gonna alienate a lot of people by answering this, FYI.
Yeah, you're really putting me in the corner here. That's a divisive question. I didn't know that we were going to
pull punches here. We asked hard questions.
I didn't know we were going to get that serious in here, but I will give an answer. I'm a straightforward kind of guy because the answer is easy for me, and that would be football. I can think all the way back to when I was a kid. I remember most Super Bowls that I watched. I mean, I can tell you who the quarterback was. The earliest ones I remember were the Redskins and the Giants. I remember that watching it over at my friend's house. We'd play G.I. Joes, and then we'd go and watch Super Bowl with his dad in the living room. So, the Super Bowl to me is just such a uniquely American thing. Like it's one day. So the World Series is just, and the World Cup is multiple games, but the Super Bowl is accumulation of just that whole season, and it comes down to one day, and we have everybody watching and all the advertisers. Is just such a great American event that you cannot beat a Super Bowl in the United States, at least for NFL football. Yeah.
Where do you hail from?
I was born in the state of Minnesota. Like I said, my dad was a pastor. We traveled around quite a bit. My family, me and my wife got married in Hawaii, and my kids were born in Hawaii. So that's where we say we're from. We spent a lot of time in Hawaii. I think decades in Hawaii between me and my wife. So that's where we say we're from. Football is they don't have an NFL team in Hawaii, but football is massively popular in the state of Hawaii, and high school football especially. The University of Hawaii football team is basically their version of the NFL. So so that's we moved around a lot as kids. But Hawaii is where we consider, when people ask us where you're from, we say Hawaii.
And you found your way to Palm Coast how long ago?
So we're fairly new residents. We're under 3 years. We're getting closer to that 3-year mark. But we had been in Hawaii for quite a bit of time, and Hawaii's getting expensive to live in. When the kids came, it got to be tough to just to see a future there, just because affordability was such an issue. So my wife's father actually but was diagnosed with ALS. So he was a veteran, and we decided to move back to the Midwest to take care of him while he needed our help. And so we did that. And then when it came down to time to moving back to Hawaii, we were like, well, I don't know that we need, is this what we want to do? And that's when we found Palm Coast. And we really did fall in love just with so much about Palm Coast that really fits our personalities and our lifestyle. And I think a lot of people share that sentimentality with what we have here, and that's why everyone is really very protective of it, because it is a great place to live, and it's just a phenomenal quality of life.
Now, I'm a recent transplant as well,
Okay.
And if somebody asked me what is my favorite place, I would say the Princess Place Preserve. I don't know if you've been there.
Of course, yeah, many times. We
Okay, all right.
we love Princess Place.
I say that because it's a great place to bike. I'm an avid biker.
Yeah.
If I asked you the question, what would you say?
There's so many great places, but I mean, being from Hawaii and just enjoying the beach culture so much, I would say Flagler Beach is my
That'd be my second.
My favorite. There's so much to like about Flagler Beach. It has that old world charm.
Get that beach town feel.
Beach town feel. You can kind of see that things haven't changed too much. I mean, it's starting to now, but things haven't changed much for decades down there, and that's something that we really like. I mean, we lived on the North Shore of Oahu for a while, and and that was a place that also had a lot of great beach charm to it. So Flagler Beach. The other place that around in Flagler County that we really love is going out to the west side in the Mondex and just seeing all the agriculture out there. I think that's the beauty of Palm Coast, is it just has so much of a diversity. You have the beach. You have, a nice small town sort of city. It's a city, but it has its small town feel to it. But then you also have that rural side of the county out on the west that I think is just beautiful. We go out there, we do different activities like horse ride, and there's gun ranges out there. And, for me, being an outdoors person, Palm Coast is just a phenomenal place. You have great places to go out and exercise, which I love to do, whether it's, hiking on trails or riding bikes or surfing at the beach. I mean, we're all big surfing families, so doing that. But we also love the rural side of things and just being out there in the farms and being out there in the country and just feeling that country lifestyle. If you guys have never been to Country Coolers out west, Country Coolers is out, it's west of Bunnell. They have the best soft serve ice cream, and you get to it's a drive-through convenience store. I think it's just the most fun. It's just so fun to go out, drive out there, be in the country, and just be out there. I think it's great.
Mondex? What is that?
So west of Bunnell is a Mondex. They call it Daytona North, I guess. There's basically a lot of that is rural, and there's mostly 1 acre lots out there, and so to me that's what country living is, and I really like that. So being able to just go out there and hang out and be a part of that is fun for me. We've lived in cities, and then being on Oahu is basically an island, which is almost like having like a big city on a small island that you can drive 40 minutes from one side of the island to the other, and it's very touristy, so there's always traffic. So just being out there in the country where you can hang out, go fishing, like we went fishing out at Hog Creek a couple weekends ago, and just being able to sit out there and catch fish, and you could be in the middle of nowhere if that's a good way to put it. It's just another one of Flagler County and Palm Coast amenities that is just fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you said that you were a coach before and everything. I was wondering if you had seen any of the fields that we have in Palm Coast for kids, and what is your impression of them? Do you think they need to be, dealt with? They're in good repair? What do you think?
Like $90 million?
Not yet.
93 to be exact.
Stop.
I say there's a double-edged sword there, because I've been a part of the city council long enough to remember there was a day where I would say probably 100 residents showed up to discuss with the city council their concerns about some of the athletic fields that we have here in the city. There was a group of youth involved with youth football, saying that some of the fields that they are on are in such bad shape. Kids are getting injured, and it's just not a great place to practice or play. And for someone who grew up playing sports, we would play baseball on a dirt field if we had to. Sometimes that's where practice was. But, I think that that is something that the city needs to be looking at as far as amenities go, is that where our kids are practicing and playing, they should be afforded a great place to do that. Now, on the other hand, on the other side of that, we have the Indian Trails Complex. My family has been involved with the youth soccer here, and my kids have played on the youth soccer league out that practices and plays out at the Indian Trails Complex. And I walk through there, and I think that those are great. Those are fantastic place for the youth soccer fields. The baseball and the little league fields are fantastic. They've held some national events on those fields, so it's kind of a two-edged sword. There are some areas that we have some great amenities when it comes to youth sports, and I think that we have a lot of work to do in some other areas. So, but we don't have a lot. So with the youth soccer, they're practicing on just kind of open fields. They're not necessarily designated for that. So, I think that's an area that the city could probably do better. We have a lot of young families here, and amenities like that mean a lot to them. So,
yeah, if we look over the last 10 years, the median age of Palm Coast has gradually ticked downward. I know when I got here in 2014, everyone called it a retirement area. As we see, that's not quite the case. Even though I've talked to people about the schools and the difference in that, they said, well, it's showing that it's trending the same amount of numbers. It hasn't really increased. So I don't really know how it's trending down if kids aren't coming in at a different place. And I hear that our test scores, which we used to be really good in schools here, A's and B, scores and so forth have come down some. And I was told that was because of new kids coming in. Now, my thing is I know that one of your platform and one of your things is that you want to prepare people not just for what we have, the older community, but also for that, what we're seeing, that downward tick in age, where it was, when I got here, it was 54, 55, maybe a little bit more. Now it's somewhere around 50 is the median. So what is your opinion on that? What plans do you have for that?
Yeah, so, the truth is that historically Palm Coast has been a retirement community, and some of those trends are slightly ticking downward in age, like you mentioned. I think that quality of life should be maintained for all residents of Palm Coast. I really do, and I think that, as we tick down, as the median age does tick down, that doesn't mean we need to stop catering to the folks that have been here for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I think that when when you're looking at a problem-solving mindset, you look at what you want to do first. So what we want to do here in Palm Coast, especially when we're looking at city council, is what we want to do is provide our residents with an excellent quality of life. So I think that keeping in mind that there is a lot of folks who have moved down here to retire, we need to keep that in mind when we look at decisions going forward. I think that things that really are important to them are things like traffic, the pace of, of building that happens or development that happens in town here, and the infrastructure. I think all those are very important to folks who have moved down here to retire. But the thing is those things are also important to folks that are raising young families here in Palm Coast. So when you look at quality of life, there are things that everyone can agree with. I mean, we all want safety. We've been designated the second safest city in the state of Florida, and that goes across all areas of demographics. So everyone wants to live in a safe community. So quality of life, we need to look at things that really cast a wide net for all of our residents, and safety, infrastructure, clean water, good schools. All those things are things that whether you move down here to retire or you are a new family that just moved into town, all of those things are important. So that's the kind of thing that you really need to be just focusing on and prioritizing when it comes to budget, because you cast a wide net and everyone sort of gets a benefit from that.
So you're looking at if you're on the city council, you would be looking at both what affects the youth and the older people. Kind of like, I know a lot of people are complaining about like the Southern Rec Center has no parking. The community center doesn't have any real parking. So these would be something the older people that go to these programs that are there would be more interested in. Although the younger kids would also, because they got tennis courts at the Southern Rec and other things. So it benefits both sides, but you're more focused on meeting the overall residents, and I think that's an honorable thing. So what is the plan or your idea of the current infrastructure? Do you agree that it needs some work, and what kind of things would you be looking for improving?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, as we just went through Milton and got dumped record number, it's close to a record rainfall here, we find that some of our water capacity isn't really up to par for the number of residents we have here in Palm Coast. So that's an infrastructure question that needs to be answered. It needs to be solved, and I think the state's getting involved with that, and they're saying, hey, this needs to be, I think it's the sewage plant that needs to be dealt with by 2028, and the price tag was like $200 million. So I think to me, the infrastructure needs to be a priority, because a city's responsibility to its residents is, it has to be the number one priority is safety, providing quality of life, which includes infrastructure. And I mentioned that, we should be looking at each area of infrastructure and giving a grade to where we are with those things. Is it an F? Is this something we need to jump on right now? Is it, currently we're functioning and we're at an A or a B, and that's something that we need to designate as being taken care of later on. The city has done sort of a study like that, but I think that we need to be utilizing that data in our decisions. So, if we're looking at a new development that's coming up for the city council to approve, we should use that data that they collected for the infrastructure surrounding that. We have an F as far as water usage over here. Why would we be looking at growing that part of the city if we can't provide infrastructure to not only the new residents, but it puts an impact on the current residents. So infrastructure, anytime a city is growing, it's the infrastructure that you really need to keep an eye on, because that's our promise to the residents who have bought a home here or decide to move here. They've invested in Palm Coast, and as a city, we should be, responsible with that investment. And infrastructure and keeping up with that is one way that we can do it.
Yeah, with that water treatment plant, which is water treatment plant 1, I know that that's around $240 million, of which they're not sure what appropriations they can get, and that'll mean that there's going to be a fee increase that we're going to have to pay over a couple of years to pay that off if they can't get appropriations for that, because there's nothing to, raise the money otherwise. Also, I think water treatment plant 2 is going to be increased by 2 million or more capacity as well, but that won't affect the people that are in area 1. So that's not really helping there. But the other thing I would also want to see if you're aware of and you would be voting on would be actual the drinking water problem that this is going to cause as well. Now, as far as the growth of everything that's happening, a lot of people are talking we need to downscale future growth until we fix these infrastructure problems, not approve additional things. I think we have about 1,200 or almost 2,000 houses that are unsold, and we have probably another 2,000 or more that could be in the already approved state to be built. So, I know you can't really say because you're only one vote on a panel of 5, but people are probably interested in where you sit on that. Are you, we're not saying you're not pro-growth, but what is your stance on this?
Yeah, and I think that like I said, it has to be individual to the area that we're looking at. It's undoubtedly, and it's true that we are in a situation where we're overgrowing our infrastructure. So we need to make sure that we're keeping up with our promises there. So, when I'm out on, I've knocked on thousands of doors, and this is a big question that comes up for everybody. And I mentioned this on some other forums that I've been a part of. There's a spectrum of folks out there in Palm Coast. On one side of the spectrum, they'd be very happy if we just decided that we're going to stop growing and we're going to shut the door, and this is just enough. We've had enough. Our infrastructure is suffering. Our traffic is growing. Like on one side of the spectrum, there's people that have just had enough of growth, and they're done. You see it on social media. I don't blame folks for that. I mean, if you've been here for 20, 30 years, you have watched this place grow from, a small little community to a small city. On the other side of that spectrum, you have folks, a lot of people in the business community, or, just people who are wanting more amenities in Palm Coast, or just excited about the growth, that they are very happy to see Palm Coast grow, and they see some of these things as growing pains, and, that's the other side of the spectrum. There's folks that are very much interested in the city of Palm Coast growing, responsibly though. But I land somewhere in the middle, okay? And I think a lot of people, when I went and knocked on the door, I asked them, or it naturally came up about growth, because that's a big issue here in Palm Coast. But they said that they understand that Palm Coast is growing, the state of Florida is growing. We've had, a lot of people moving to the state of Florida in the last 4 years. Palm Coast is one of those areas, and they understand that. But what is important to them is that they feel like the city is taking care of them along the way. And that is the thing that comes up the most, is infrastructure. So they want to know that things are being proactive for them. They want to know if there's a new development coming into an area. Has there been a traffic study that's, been proposed, and a way to take care of the new traffic that's going to be coming to an area? Is our water system able to handle all this new growth? I mean, you would be irresponsible to say that we need to continue growing despite the fact that the water coming out of our faucets is brown. Those are things that we need to, I'm not saying it is, but there were times where we had a lot of rain, and that was the case for some residents in Palm Coast. But you need to be responsible about this type of thing. I know there's been talk of, hey, we need to halt growth. I wouldn't say that I'm there, because I need to see what the plan is. We wouldn't just say we're going to halt growth for a year because of this or that. I'd like to see them have a plan. Say, we're going to do this and this and this. We're going to take care of our water, sewage. We're going to take care of our drinking water. We need to take care of this road, that road, and that road, because they're not functioning for our city. And while we do that, we need to take a break with this, or we need to slow things down. If there's a plan in place that was strategically put forward, then you can consider it. But until we get that kind of information, just saying it outright, I don't think is necessarily responsible either. So I just like to see more details about what the plan is. Let's talk about what the plan is. I know they put the 2050 plan together, and that lays out a lot of what the city plans to do. But we have immediate issues now that need to be dealt with. And I think that needs to be the focus of what we talk about at the city council, because it really is the focus of what our residents are talking about.
One of those things what you're talking about right there that I would think is important that I just want to discuss real quick is the hiring of a new city manager. You can have all the best plans, but if you don't have a leader that can implement those plans properly by, directing the resources the city has, then a lot of those plans are not going to function properly. As we've seen, I think it could be possible, I could be wrong, that the city hasn't probably functioned as it could because we haven't had a consistent, qualified city manager for some time. What is your opinion as it's going to be left to the new council to decide on a city manager? What would you be looking forward in a candidate, and what do you think would be the best city manager that you want for the city?
Yeah, I actually really look forward to being part of those discussions. For me, I have three things that I think are going to be really important when we hire a new city manager. obviously education, someone who has some educational background in the administration of a city. That has to be something. Preferably, the other thing is if someone was local, someone had that kind of a background and were local and they understood our issues here in Palm Coast, and understood, where we've come from, just having known the history and known all the different stakeholders involved. That would be ideal. I don't know if it's possible or not. But the third and the big one for me is I think that we need someone who has experience. And I don't mean experience as like they've been a city manager for 20 years or they've been a city manager for 50 years. That's not the kind of experience I'm talking about. I'm talking about someone who can sit down with us and with the city and lay out their system and how they provided a service to a city, kind of like ours, and they were able to get results. I'd like to see, their history in being able to do that, because anyone can be a good city manager, but if you can't show that you were able to bring results for the city, I would be hesitant about hiring somebody like that. So I would like to see that history of working as someone who was able to provide results, but not only that, but they're able to articulate our issues here in Palm Coast, articulate what their plan would be to address a lot of these issues, and then lay out exactly what these measurable things would be. So by this time, I would like to do this. By this time, I would like to complete this. This is how we're going to manage our taxes. This is how we're going to bring tax relief to our residents. So just being able to show a history of being able to do that, and then being able to show a plan that articulates that they understand our issues, but also showing that they know what the results are that we need, and they're going to be able to deliver.
Do you think experience is going to play a bigger role with respect to a new city manager, seeing that 4 of the 5 are going to be absolutely green members of the council? You're going to only have one member that has 2 years worth of experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, experience is going to be a big one. But leadership is being able to put forth a plan, like I was mentioning. And, whether they have 5 years experience or 50 years experience, if they're able to put together a plan that shows that, they're going to be able to focus on getting things done and getting results for our community, then I think that, we can all get behind that. So experience to me is important, but just having that plan and having those results, put forth in a way that we can all understand what to expect in, 1 year, 5 year, 10 years. I think that's probably the most important thing for me.
And what is your expectations on actually, acquiring a new city manager? I mean, the timing is going to be important. Right now, they're probably going to wait till after the election, because I don't think many city managers are going to want to give their resume to 4 members that are going to be gone in a handful of weeks. Do you expect this should be, would you think we should have a new city manager within the next 6 months or less?
Well, that would be great if that could happen. Now, we need to get the right person in. And if that takes longer than 6 months, I think that's to me, that's worthwhile the wait, because when you make a commitment to somebody who is going to be running our city, to a sense, we need to have absolute confidence in them. So, right now, Ms. Johnson is the acting city manager. She has a lot of working experience with the city, and she's willing to continue in that role until we find a permanent person who is qualified to do that. So I don't think we should rush it. I do know that this is a high priority, and we need to get someone in there as fast as we can. But I don't think that we should. We should be focusing on getting the right person. I don't think we should really be putting timelines on it, because if it takes longer than 6 months and we do find that right person after that, it will be worth the wait, in my opinion.
Yeah, and SRG is probably casting a wide net nationally to find somebody. And Mrs. Biven was an internal hire. So would you rather see somebody internally hired or someone come from the outside? Now, I know you mentioned you'd rather have somebody who has Palm Coast experience or knows what's going on around here. But on the heels of that, is that still you'd rather have somebody from internal?
Well, I don't necessarily prescribe to the idea that someone currently working for the city is the right candidate. I don't know that to be sure. If someone comes forward and they are, then that's great. But I'd like to make sure we do, a national search to get all the most qualified people, in a room together who are going to vie for that position. So if it's somebody that's local, I think that would be awesome. That would be, beneficial because, they understand, they live here and they understand. But they're going to have to compete with everybody else that comes in with experience and, their plan for the city as well. So we just need to get the right person with the right mindset in that position. And I think, having deliverable, measurable goals is going to be the real key.
There's been some people going to the council and talking about the actual results of some of the city, elements and so forth. Different utilities not doing their job as well as they expected or meeting the residents' expectations. Even the current mayor said that the swell system or the stormwater system isn't meeting the expectations at all, despite the increase in budget, increase in manpower, increase in equipment. Would you be, if the city manager comes back and says we need to downsize because we can be more efficient or we can get things done or we need to increase, whatever it is, how would you assess that?
Yeah, so, the swales and the drainage system is something that I've been following for quite some time. And, just to get a good idea of the way I do things, I'd say probably 6 months ago, I scheduled a meeting with the Stormwater Department that I could meet with them and find out more information about what they do. So I met with Carl Cody and Lynn Stevens at the city, and they gave me a nice presentation about what they do and the challenges that they have in, just making sure that the needs of the city are met. What I will say from that meeting, what I saw is that the swale crews are massive for Palm Coast. So he showed me 2 pictures of the swale crews that are serving the city now, and you need a drone to be able to see the extent of the equipment and the folks that are involved in serving the city with the swales. So there's a lot going on, and he told me that they kind of operate on 2 different wavelengths. One of them is that they do routine swale maintenance. The way the city has grown, I don't remember exactly what the number was, but it takes close to 20 years to do a full cycle of swale maintenance in Palm Coast. Maybe
I read there was like 1,200 miles of swales.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. That's a lot. But he also said they also take care of the swales on an emergency basis. So if you make a complaint, this is the way they said it works. You make a complaint, and they'll come out and you'll talk about how your swale is functioning. If they deem that that's an emergency, they will come out and service your swale. So, like I mentioned, we just had record rainfall here, and I've seen pictures of some pretty significant, backup when it came to swales. Now, that kind of data should be used for the city to go out there and say, how can we remedy this to ensure that the residents that live around this area feel confident that if we're going to have another one of these events, that we're not going to have, our entire front yard flooded. We're not going to have water intrusion on our house. Those are the things that should be driving, I think, city budget. Going out there and making sure that the areas that need to be taken care of are remedied, the problems are solved. On top of what they have to do with routine maintenance. So when it comes to downsizing, I'm a small government guy. I don't think that we should continue to just grow government because as you can see, that's not always the solution to things. Anytime that we can downsize a government entity, and there's ways that we can do that or become more efficient or use the money better, I think that should 100% be the goal at all times. And I think with the new city manager, that's definitely something that I look forward to having those kind of conversations. just making sure, and I think that for the most part they run an efficient program over there, but we're always looking at tax raises. Hey, we need this, so we need to raise taxes, or we need to raise the millage rate. When I think that there's always opportunities to do things more efficiently with the money that you have, and we shouldn't be afraid of the idea of downsizing. That should be something that we shouldn't see as a bad thing. That's a good thing. If we can look at a department and either do things more to efficiency or downsize, I mean, that should be the way things work when it comes to city.
And I wanted to give a little plug to the swale. It's called the Swale Maintenance and Pilot Program, which has been going on here, I believe, since the beginning of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing exactly what you're saying. They're kind of spot going around, and they're regrading those swales. And if this was, like you said, a record or close to a record rainfall, like I said, I do a lot of biking around town. I don't see a whole lot of flooding going on. And also, there was only maybe a handful of houses that reported any flooding, and maybe about 100 homes that had minor damage. So, and I don't know if that London waterway, it's a 16-acre pond. I don't know if you know about that, where the stormwater is supposed to flow. I don't know if that's online yet, but in my recollection, it seems like it's working, because I haven't seen a whole lot of flooding in any of the sections.
Well, that depends on who you talk to. So there's a difference between flooding and in water intrusion to your house. So I will say that when it came to water intrusion, there were some folks that did experience that. But you're right, the number wasn't very, very. It wasn't as much as you
could have been
think.
worse.
Good way to put it. It could have been worse, but. When that's something that happens to your house, I mean that's a very big deal, and that's a scary thing. So we need to really, if there's something that the city could do for those folks that had that happen, I think that should be done. Then you're looking at flooding, and then you could look at, what do you look at when you say that? Is that water that is filling up both swales and going over the road to where there's several inches of water on the road? From my understanding, to some degree, that's the way swale system is supposed to work, is that it's supposed to fill up in the swale, and instead of going up towards the house, if it goes over the road, that's kind of the way it's supposed to work. Now, if the city sees that the swale is operating in that way when there's high capacity water coming, I think that they should do something about that to make sure the drainage happens better. Nobody wants 3 or 4 inches of water in their front yard and in the road for 2 or 3 days. So, we're not saying that we're perfect here in Palm Coast. I think that we should use data like that to problem solve. So that's the kind of thing that I think that we shouldn't do blanket statements like we did good or bad. I think that there's ways that we could do better for folks. But I do think there's really good positive things that we could look at, especially after a major rain like that we can say, we did pretty good here. In some areas. So I think meeting with Carl Cody and Miss Lynn, they're very community-minded. And I think that as long as we're meeting the needs of the citizens, especially when, there are concerns, I think that should be the goal.
Yeah, in my area, in the L section, there's several areas that had bad canals that weren't cleared properly before. And then the runoff into the bigger area and the new build site that they did in that area also kind of ran over into a couple other places. But I think some of this was also, you could see the individual areas where people weren't maintaining their swells and so forth properly also contributed to this. So it's a multiple things. Residents don't really always take care of the area that they're supposed to take care of. City sometimes can't get to everything either. But overall, I think with the amount of rain, I couldn't really complain. I couldn't go some places because it wouldn't allow my car to go through that area. But yeah.
So how'd you get to work? I
had to really route all the way through different routes in the local area to get around to an area where I could actually get out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I couldn't get out. It was just I couldn't take main roads. A lot of the roads were flooded to a point. It was coming up to the middle of my door, so that was not possible.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people had that experience. So that's great data. I mean, the city should be looking at the data, what complaints they receive from residents, for those that were able to get out. Maybe some weren't, and then they're stuck. Maybe there's, someone who's retired who has a a car that doesn't lift, it doesn't have very high clearance. Maybe they weren't able to get out. So that's the kind of data that I think is really important for the city to absorb, and then focus on doing what they can to remedy those situations. Because, the funny thing that you'll find, and, I've been on HOA boards, and I've been, involved in the city council now, but the things that you'll find is what is an emergency to one person is not an emergency to another person. And so that's kind of where the city needs to delineate, like, well, this person, this wasn't a big deal for them, but for some residents it was. What can we do to help them? And like I said, we can't do everything, but at the same time, as being a government institution who is here to be for the people and by the people and run by the people, that's the kind of stuff that we need to be looking at. Like, we need to serve the community as best that we can, and it's not always an easy solution. And what's a solution for some people is a problem for others, but we need to get down to where we find the best solution possible and really come together to find out what that is.
So I've watched a couple of the city council meetings online, and we see people come up and talk all the time about their issues and so forth. And it just seems like they just say next, basically. Yeah. How do you feel about that?
No, I completely agree. And I think that is part of the reason that I got involved in this. And I think that's where my skill set, and where I kind of analyzed this and said, well, this is where my skill set comes into play. I've been to the city council and spoke many times. The system is you get 3 minutes to speak, and then you go sit down. Okay. Now, at the end of public comment, the city council members can then either address some of the things that they've heard, or they don't have to necessarily. And I've heard that from a lot of people who have attended city council meetings, that they felt like they went up there, they either took time off work, or they took time out of their day to go down there and give, whatever passionate 3 minutes that they could give, and then they may or may not have been heard. And I think that a lot of times it's easy to pass over when you have 20, 30, 40 residents coming up with different things that they want to bring to the city. You can't necessarily address those things all at once, in one city council meeting. So I like the idea of doing more problem-solving town hall meetings. And I think that that's my skill set. I'd love to do that, elected or not. I think that there's room for that, where I think that, people getting together, let's say at the community center or somewhere where everybody can get together and talk about, what the issue is that they're having. And, maybe there's other people that want to talk about that too. Because when you're talking about problem solving, it's, you can spend a lot of time focusing on the problem, but unless you look at, ideas and coming up with ideas to solve the problem, you're going to waste a lot of time. So I think that there should be some kind of a transition from, hey, I just gave my 3 minutes, and I know that you can leave a comment card and someone from the city can follow up with you. But I think there should be a way, and I think a town hall is a great way to do it. Currently, the way a town hall works is you'll have a candidate come and talk and then field questions, where I think that, like, for instance, I think a great thing would be, let's say 3 issues came up at the city council meeting over the last month. And you come in there and say, hey, today, we're going to be talking about this, this, and this. We're going to be breaking it up in groups. And we're going to be talking about what we feel like a good solution would be. So let's talk about, you can spend a little bit of time on your experience and what you think, whether it's drainage or roads or water or the growth, any of that stuff that's really a big issue to residents. But what do you think the solution is? And I think when you get people together that are talking about that and willing to listen to both sides. Recently I was at a city council meeting where another big issue came up, and this is a really big issue that when you were around, when I was knocking on doors, especially in the C section and the E section, was these short-term rentals or the Airbnbs. And people are very upset because they feel like there's a Holiday Inn Express being run in their next door. They don't feel like it's appropriately regulated, and it's really affecting a lot of people's quality of life. So I was there in a meeting where a lot of folks came up, and they talked about their experience and having difficulties with having, one of these short-term rentals next to them, and the stories are tough. I mean, it sounds like a difficult situation.
I've never used one, and I've never had anyone around me. What are the complaints?
Oh, there's people up till 3 a.m. blasting music. There's cars parked in the driveway. There's big parties. There's garbage, there's garbage in the driveway, things like that. It's hard. People in the pool at all hours, things like that. I mean, I understand those things. And they went up and they talked about that. So, but then on the other hand, we also had people that came to the city council and said, hey, this is my house that I use as a form of income, and I follow the rules, and I make sure that I'm respectful to my neighbors. And I watched as that process happened, as you had both sides of the argument coming together that came very intent on giving a passionate argument. And, this conversation happened out in the hallway afterwards. But I watched them come together and say, hey, I understand what you're going through. I always am respectful. I'm totally okay with us putting rules in place for folks that are using these short-term rentals but not following, respectful rules. I'm totally for that because I'm one of those people that does that. And so I watched the folks that are there saying, we want to get rid of these short-term rentals, or we need more regulation. And then people on the other hand saying, hey, this is my livelihood. I watched them come together, and they talked about how to solve the problem. And I think that is where we need to be, is that we need to be giving our residents a place, with restraints as far as being respectful to each other, and just being able to listen and hear everybody out, but hearing all sides of argument and then coming together and saying, this is what we'd like to come up as a solution, because this is really our city. I'm a big representative government guy, so we need to represent our constituents and what they need, and you can't do that unless you get everybody in a room who's willing to talk about the issues and come up with a solution together. And then that's where I think that we can come up with something like a citizen motion or citizen proposal to the city council and say, hey, a group of this many people got together. These are the things that we came up as ideas that were solutions, and we'd love for you to consider those, as far as our government goes.
So one thing I want to ask a question about is, you said that they can make a comment card. In addition to that, we got to consider there's a lot of people who might not be able to attend because of work or other obligations, children, whatever might be coming up. Is there any other way for them to have their voice heard, like a online chat or phone call in, any of this that you know of? And would this be something that you might want to bring up to consider giving more voice to people so they feel like they're more engaged, that they're heard?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that you can do that. I mean, there's a lot of different avenues on social media that people like to talk about. But with the city, there is a website that you can go to, Palm Coast Connect, I think. And you can use that for any of your concerns that you have. Just go on there and, type in your concern, and they get back. I will say this about the city. They do a good job of getting back to you. Whether you like how they got back to you or not, but they get back to you and they start the conversation. So I think that's one great way to start. The other great way, and you said if you can't go to the city council because of work, and that, that obviously is a challenge. Most of those meetings start at 9 a.m. There's only one meeting a month that is at 6 p.m. If I get in there, I'd like to propose us doing more 6 p.m. meetings, and I know that has implications with the staff and things like that, but that's the night that most residents show up. All you have to do is go on a first Tuesday of the month when it's a 6 p.m. meeting, and you'll see that place is full of residents. If you go on a 9 a.m. meeting, a lot of times it's empty. So that's data right there that you could use that shows that that's when residents want to be there. But getting back to your question, I would say contact your representative. I did that when I had something that I want brought up. I contacted all the members of the city council. I got to meet with each one of them, talk about what I wanted to propose or talk about, things that I thought were important, and utilize that time to really hear them out. And I know city council members can't meet with everybody one-to-one, but there are times where they can. So reach out and have a conversation with your city council member. Advocate for more town hall meetings like the ones that they're doing, I think are good, where a candidate will go and meet with residents somewhere. You can ask questions. But I would like to see some more problem solving as far as that being a focus of the time that we spend with our representatives, because too often I think do we say, I want to advocate for this, so we go through government channels. And I think that's a great thing to do. I think that's what they're there for. And if elected, I will be 100% dedicated to doing things like that. But in the meantime, we are also residents, and we can advocate for things on our own. Get out there and start talking with people. Find people that have interests in common. Just do that, so that way, get things started, because, we're not totally dependent on government. We can make things happen on our own too. So I think that's another avenue that often gets overlooked. Get out there, find who has similar concerns, create a group together, and advocate for your concerns together like that.
You said something interesting. You said that as the city grows, the needs of the people in the city grow, whether either end of the spectrum, from the people who've been here for 25 years to the people who just got here. And part of that need is attracting more businesses and more light industry to Palm Coast, so there can be a competitive wage here. Kids could get jobs here, and that maybe people don't have to travel out of Palm Coast for professional jobs. Right now we had, I don't know if you heard about it, Aura Aero. We lost it. I don't know if I want to say lost it, but it's going down to
Daytona.
Daytona, thank you.
Yep.
Have you thought of any industries you'd like to see here in Palm Coast that we don't already have?
Well, just on that subject, my three things when I was out campaigning are: number one is quality of life. Number three was community advocacy, which we've talked a lot about here today. But number two was economic vitality. And for those that, most people are aware of this, but for those that are not, our city tax base is made up over 90% based on our residents' property tax. So anytime we need a new amenity or we need to fix something, we say to the residents, we come with our hat in hand and say, hey, would you guys mind fitting the bill for this? We need to do a better job of recruiting industry here, not just for the tax base, because we need more industry to offset that issue, but for our residents. We need to be able to provide them with a nice, livable wage here in Palm Coast. So we need to recruit things that are going to pay high wages. Now that was it Aura, yeah. So we were in consideration for that. I thought that was on its way here. I understand they picked Daytona. I mean, there's Embry-Riddle and some other, their airport is a little more developed than ours. But those are the kind of things that we need here. We need, manufacturing things. We need tech. We need, any kind of job that's going to pay a livable wage for our residents. We really should be looking at recruiting, and we do need to be picky. I know that at one point the city had a proposal for like an animal testing center, where they're testing medicine on animals, or I don't think obviously that would be a good fit for us, but I think anything that's going to provide jobs, that's going to keep folks local. I think that those are what we really need to be focusing on. The city, for many years, did not have an economic development coordinator. We've been without one for a long time, but they recently hired one, and I think probably about 6 months ago. And I think we need to really work with that person to begin the process of recruiting good companies here, manufacturing, tech, medical stuff, and anything that will provide folks with a livable wage. And I think the issue now for Palm Coast is that we need to be able to offer space to them.
I was just about to ask you that. I don't think it's a problem with people wanting to come or companies. It's the zoning. We don't have enough zoning for what we need.
Correct. So we've done a really good job of rezoning our designated commercial space into, other things. So we've kind of run out of space for that. I think that we need to be looking at areas that we can sell. Palm Coast sells itself. I've said this all over the place. Like, what a great, clean city we are. We've been rated the second safest city in the state of Florida. I mean, those are two things that I think when a business or a big business or a manufacturing company or anything like that, warehouse, any of that stuff, when they look at that, I think that those are things that would really entice them to come here. So those are here. I think we need to get the space for them. So that's something that our economic development coordinator and our city council needs to problem solve, because we have to have ready space to say, hey, look at this space that we have. We need to start recruiting this and this and this. And this is what we're going to provide to the company when you get here. So I think those are the big issues coming up that we're going to need to solve, because there's a cliff coming for Palm Coast. All it would take is a major downturn in our housing market, and we would be in trouble. I think we would probably need to. I think from 2008 to 2013 or 14, they tripled the millage rate in Palm Coast because the housing decline that happened in that time. So we need to get on this kind of stuff, and we need to solve these problems yesterday, because our city's health depends on it. I'm a psychologist. When you sit down with me, I'm looking at what we can do to become healthier, whether it's mental health, physical health, or just being more productive. That's what we need to be focusing on as a city. How do we become a healthy city? Because a 92 or 93% ad valorem tax coming from property tax, that's not sustainable over a long period of time. So that's we need to solve that problem as soon as we can.
You made mention a couple times there about being the second safest city in the state. In part, that's probably in reference to our police department and the sheriff. We've done a good job. And I know they even went back and kept to their budget that they accepted and found more money to take care of their own people. Now, there is a study that says that they're short on people. And some, people that are running for office are agreeing it's about 36, 37. Some are saying it's only like 6 or 7. What is your opinion on this?
My understanding was they were looking to hire 12 sheriff's deputies each year for the next 3 years. That's how I understood it. I've met with Sheriff Staley on numerous occasions. I have, all the utmost trust in the way he runs his department and the men that he puts around him to serve us here in Palm Coast and in Flagler County. If Sheriff Staley and his department says that we need, we need something, I think it's good for us to respond to what he's saying he needs. And we need to make sure that our residents are safe. You cannot have quality of life in any city without safety. And then you could look at cities all over the country right now who've decided to decline and take money away from their police departments. And those experiments go south very quickly. So I completely trust the sheriff's department in whatever recommendation that they have as far as what they need to take care of our city. Because when you get behind on these kind of things, it's very hard to catch up. Once, some of these things, these crime entities move in because we don't have adequate officers to handle situations, it's very hard to come back from that. So I trust the sheriff, and I believe that his proposals have the best in mind for the city as well as his department. So.
It wasn't just a sheriff. There was that study out of University of Florida.
Right.
I think that's where you got that number from.
Yeah. And from what I understood, that was approved already. So
the 8 were approved.
Okay. So then the next budget, they'll look at that again. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I understood that they did approve that. So that makes me happy. I think we need to take care of the sheriff that takes care of us, and our deputies that take care of us. We need to take care of them.
I was going to ask you about the Charter Amendment 1. going in this direction. We were going in that direction. There's not, the lawsuit's there.
Yeah.
And if it's not passed, then it's all a moot point.
Right.
I think there's nothing to do from there. But if it's passed, then obviously the lawsuit's going to go forward. One, do you agree that the amendment wording should have been something more? That this is it's a bit cryptic.
Yeah. No, I think the wording really doomed this referendum. Number one, when you say future residents of Palm Coast, I'm a future resident of Palm Coast. You guys are future residents of Palm Coast. My kids are future residents of Palm Coast. So anyone that's living here is on the hook for that money, the bonds. And the other thing I didn't really like in the wording there is that this money could be used for emergencies. And I get a little squirmy when I hear that word, because what's an emergency? It's not spelled out in the referendum or the amendment. So who gets to determine what is an emergency and what isn't? So those two things is I think really puts people on their heels about this amendment. I did some research when it comes to using bonds for leveraging bonds for your city. And a lot of cities our size do have a higher leverage when it comes to these bonds. I think they put those bonds in place because we don't have state income tax in the state of Florida. So they use that as a way to fund, city infrastructure. But I'm against borrowing in general for our city. There is an argument for it. The argument for it is, hey, we can pay for this over time, as opposed to everyone's going to be on the hook for it right now if you're going to pay for it. But I think that we should not borrow money unless it's very much spelled out as to for what this money is going to go to. I mean, down to the dollar amount. We shouldn't have a referendum that's so vague. If we're looking at, getting into the bond argument, how are you going to say yes or no when you don't exactly know what the money's going to be used for? So that to me is a non-starter. I think that we should be fiscal hawks when it comes to this, and we shouldn't be raising taxes on our residents really for any reason unless it's for something very specific and that the public has come out openly to support, because it's the public's money. I don't like the argument of let's just raise taxes. It's just $30 per household. Sure, it's just $30 per household, but that's $30 that could have went to someone else all across the country right now with inflation. My house, your house, everybody is making hard financial decisions, and I think that is the issue when it comes to the budget, is that we need to prioritize. We can't look to raise taxes every time we need something. So priority has to be in place. Safety, infrastructure, water, all that stuff should be the priority in the budget. We're getting close to almost $500 million in our budget here in Palm Coast. So that's a lot of money. So we need to be prioritizing how it goes. Just like at your house and at my house, there's a lot of things that I would like to do, but we look at the budget and we say, we can't do it. And I think those conversations need to continuously happen for the city. We can't just grow government and grow government and grow government every time there's a need, because I'll let you in on a little secret. There's always a need. There's always a need. So we need to be very careful on how we spend our money. If we're going to borrow our money, it should be very much laid out to the public exactly how this is going to be used. Otherwise, this is not something that I'd ever be interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree that the residents should have to vote on that as well? Because that was excluded from that referendum as well.
If the residents can vote on something, they should. I think anytime you can put the decisions in the hands of the people of Palm Coast, I think that you should. I mean, because this is our city. This is our government that we fund. And these are our representatives that should be representing us. So you can bypass that whole process by putting things into a referendum for the people just to vote for it. And if you can do it, we should do it as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that, and it's debatable. I think the problem was the referendum just seems to get rid of it all. That takes out the $15 million, it takes out the 36 months, and pretty much says, because the language isn't very, very good, that the council has carte blanche on what to spend. Now, nobody wants that, and also, as he mentioned, it takes away the right of the people to vote on what the town that they're living in is spending on. And then I've heard also other people say, well, what if the referendum said the 15 million is unrealistic? That's wording from 15, 20 years ago. You can't buy a firehouse for 15 million. Maybe if they would have come up and put 60 million in there and 5 years repayment, then that language would have been something, because you can actually do something with 60 million, and the council doesn't have to keep coming out to the people for everything they want to do. Would you agree with that premise, or would you like to keep it where it's at?
Well, the premise you're saying is if people know what the money's going to be used for and they get a chance to vote on it, then
We're upping the limits.
Right. So that takes me out of the equation. I get to go into the voting booth and I get to say whether I agree with this, this decision or not. And so does everyone else in Palm Coast. So I think that I completely agree with that. Anytime, like I said, anytime that we can make a decision here and we can spell it out for our residents, and then they get to decide, I think that should be the process.
Okay, now, on the heels of that, this is going to come down to one of two things. This is not going to be passed on the November 5th ballot, so nobody cares. This goes away. Or it's going to be passed, and then the lawsuit goes through, and then the court has to decide whether or not to invalidate what the people vote on. If it passes, people voted on that. They get to, so the court now says, you know what, I don't agree with that. I'm going to take away the voice of the people. And this is all academic. What would you say to that?
Well, hypotheticals.
Yeah, I love hypotheticals.
Hypotheticals. All right. So
put me on the spot.
I mean, that's a tough one. So if the people of Palm Coast vote this in,
even with the cryptic language,
language, and then the lawsuit obviously puts a halt on it. I mean, that's where we sit. I mean, that's where I mean, I don't know what the decision will be going forward. That will be up to the courts. But that's where we sit. For me specifically, if the court ruling says that this was not an ethical referendum and it's overturned, okay. But if it's not, we have. I think we're back to square one, where we need to say, okay, well, this decision was made, and now as a city, for the residents of Palm Coast, we need to put together exactly what we intend to do with this money, how much, what's the cap, all that stuff, because I don't think that it is, it is fair for the residents. I don't think it's ethical for the residents to not understand what we're borrowing money for. So I would be a huge advocate either way, elected or not. And when I say that, it's because we're still, whether you're elected or not, you're still a resident of Palm Coast. I say that we should be advocating, if that happens in a hypothetical situation, we should advocate for what we wanted in the first place. Clear wording, clear understanding of what the money's going to be used for, and the timeline of when it's going to be spent back. Paid back, yeah.
Okay, Andrew, I appreciate you coming on. We've gone over our time and so forth, but I want to go ahead and give you this opportunity to go ahead and let residents know how they can reach you, how they can talk to you more and discuss their issues as you go and finish your campaign up to the election time.
Yeah. So you guys mentioned I'm hard to find. So obviously wernerforcouncil.com is my website, but you're not going to get a lot of information on me. I put just basic things that I believe in, and then some founding father quotes that I really think are, pertinent to the time. But where you can really find, what I've been doing and what I'm all about, really, it kind of explains who I am, is through my my Facebook account, which is Andrew T. Werner for Palm Coast City Council District 3. Go check that out. And what you're going to see on there is what I believe what I would like to see in a candidate. Is I have pictures of me meeting with residents. I have me attending local events. I have me volunteering in the community. And I have what I think is important to our city, on a lot of information that you can get on there about me. So go to Andrew T. Werner at Palm Coast for Palm Coast City Council District 3, and I think you'll get kind of a nice story of my campaign over the last year.
And also we advertise on Facebook who's going to be on the podcast, and we let people ask questions. Who's Nathan Phelps?
Nathan Phelps?
Ring a bell?
What's that?
Does it ring a bell?
Yeah, Nathan Phelps is a family friend of mine. Yeah. So, any particular reason why you decided to bring him up?
No, because I thought he donated $10.
Yes.
And if he's such a good friend, why only $10?
Oh, well, that's a great I'm glad you actually brought that up. So, I have an opponent, right?
Sorry.
So my opponent in the race, I think we talked a little bit about this before. He's an investigator, and he prides himself as being an investigator, although I would say that he's had trouble just finding basic information about me, like what I do for a living and where I work. I mean, for a long time, they've spread a lot of really weird rumors about me. And I know this is politics, but I feel like it's kind of a disservice to people going out there and saying that I don't have a job or I don't work in the school district, because I do some contracting in the district, and anyone can go online and look at the Flagler Palm Coast High School and look at the staff members, and there my name is. It doesn't take much of an investigator to do that. Okay, so. He also has been harassing people that have donated to me. So what Nathan decided to do was donate $10 to me to see if he would get a call from someone who was going to harass him. I think he was hoping for it. So, if my opponent is listening, Nathan is disappointed that he hasn't been called yet. But he's hopeful. So, and on that
There's
note,
time.
And on that note, I'll say, this is campaigning, obviously, but there's been a collective sort of movement to paint me as somebody who is, not dedicated to the people of Palm Coast, who has taken money from people who have expectations of me. And I would tell you that, I obviously would never do that. I'm a man of faith. I'm a Christian man. And I think that is what's wrong with our country, when you're taking money for expectations from outside of what is important to the city. I would never do that. But on top of that, I wouldn't waste an entire year of my life campaigning and getting out and talking to residents and knocking on thousands of doors just to give my vote over to someone else on that city council. So I just want to say this to the people of Palm Coast. Don't believe in coordinated events or coordinated campaign movements to disparage who I am. Get to know me better than just what you see online. And I am dedicated to the people of Palm Coast because I want to bring results to the people, and that's it. That's just who I am. And if I got into this just to become a rubber stamp for some other special interest, which I think special interests, that's a big problem for our city and for our country. We need representatives who are going to be about what's right for the people, do what's right for the people, and vote for what's right for the people. And I am 100% committed to doing that.
All right, Andrew, thank you very much for coming on. We appreciate you sharing your story. This almost exclusive, since we don't see you anywhere else. We appreciate it. I do want to say before I, in all seriousness, we did reach out to Ray Stevens, your opponent, and asked him to come on. He said he was too busy, couldn't make it with our schedules. So our schedules couldn't work out for that to happen. So once again, TRE is nonpartisan. We don't take any sides with anyone. We give everyone the opportunity to go ahead and express their campaign, their goals, and who they are. So we're thankful that Andrew was able to come on. We got to know him a little bit better. If you like this episode, please like and subscribe. We're still trying to get our subscribers up. Most of the people that watch this, roughly 98%, are not subscribed. If you could help us out in any way, subscribing would be the best way. Plus, it also helps you get to know these people that are running for city government, which is very vital to you to know who is running and who is making these decisions within your government so that it affects you in your daily life. So we hope that you'll watch this, as not too many people are really covering this in a non-agenda-based way. We're clearly letting them tell their way of their story and who they are, without attacking them, without being hostile or having any agenda on our part. We hope you can see this when we watch these videos. We want to simply empower people to get the information that they deserve in order to make the right decision. So we look forward to seeing you in our future videos, and we hope that you will comment and subscribe. Thank you so much.